I was reading a magazine article in Wired magazine in June, and it was very illuminating for me because it talked about how mid-sized cities across the country are developing new innovation in traditional technologies and industries. And as I read through the article, it talked about many of these cities lacked a four-year research university. They lacked a significant amount of investment capital. They lacked all the ingredients that most of us would think would be necessary, or formula, for regions to really be considered like a tech center or an epicenter for innovation. And the folks that did the study were one of the senior editors from Wired and folks from NPR. And what they discovered were people that left their cell phones on during meetings were extremely rude. And it was amazing how those people always failed. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. That was a perfect look. But what it said to me was there's basically a formula that mid-sized towns and regions and cities across the country were figuring out. And many of these jobs were being filled by people who had a 1- and 2-year degree, or had 5, 6, 10 years of old industrial type of business in chemicals or industrial aviation, synthetics, things that you wouldn't think would be resident in software or Silicon Valley type regions, you know, obviously Seattle. But it gave me hope. And it told me that mid-sized cities around the country are figuring things out because the economy is changing. And I thought, what if we started getting the conversation going? First of all, let's start with talking about some of the entrepreneurs and innovations that are happening here in our region. So that's why we brought together several entrepreneurs and CEOs, folks that are already doing great work. And as a region and a community, as an organization, Launchpad, what could we be doing to promote what entrepreneurs are doing here? How do we play a role in bringing folks together? We want to play a part in that role, but what if we spend our time promoting what you're doing or connecting you to the resources you need? And we start that by having a conversation. So what I thought was, let's bring somebody to Spokane who's really been in the thick of the Seattle entrepreneurial culture for several years and find out a little bit more about them and, you know, their organization, but also some of the stuff that she's seen happen in Seattle in such a great culture. But also, let's talk a little bit about what we could be doing here and have a conversation about that. And that was really the idea that really sparked my interest in doing something like this. You're going to see more things happen. We're not just going to be doing an event or a series of events. Many other things are going to be going on. But with that, I'd like to thank Troy IT Solutions for being here. They're our title sponsor, great partners of ours, and many other partners, a lot, and many of them are going to be downstairs. So go ahead. I think you got to turn that on. I'm going to turn mine off here real quick. But just go ahead and take a couple minutes, and then he's going to also introduce Rebecca, and then we're going to have a quick conversation.
I'm Chris Patrick. I'm the Director of Sales for Troy, and we're not only excited to be here as the title sponsor, but also as participants. We're hopeful that this day will yield a whole lot of learning and maybe a good deal of networking for those of us in this line of work. So I'm pleased to be here. So I've got 2 minutes, and I thought I would take just a second to talk a little bit about kind of where we came from and kind of what we're about. As our name might suggest, our entire focus is around creating value for our clients by making sure that what we do for them leverages technology to help them reduce costs, be more productive, and hopefully grow in a profitable way. We started as the internal IT department for Lamaster Daniels, a regional CPA firm. And kind of as such had this mindset that, boy, we're going to be able to differentiate if we focus not so much on the technology that we're passionate about and have a good deal of excitement and maybe skill around, but more around, boy, there's got to be a fit between that and the client business goal. That really should be at the head of the table, not so much the stuff that we kind of geek out over. And so far, that's kind of worked. I think from a Troy perspective, there's 80 of us now, and that growth has been a fun thing to watch. And some of that has come from a recent acquisition. We were acquired by Inland Imaging. Most of you know that name. They're a local formidable company that spent the last 15 plus years growing a radiology technology and services organization. That brought those two technology teams together, and today our product focus is simply on providing ways in which we can help clients be more connected with their customers. We bring doctors and patients and their peers closer together. We implement solutions that help businesses be more profitable and demystify scary things like the cloud and virtualization. All that to be said, We'll develop all those things. We'll help clients support and manage them. And the unique thing is the focus has to always be on the business goal, and then the information that technology gets them and brings to them in order to let them make good decisions fast and efficiently. And I think that there's going to be some parallels between what you hear today and kind of that perspective that we shared when we kind of got cooking. So thanks, Bill, for the opportunity to be up here, and hope you guys enjoy the rest of the afternoon. I also get to introduce our honored guest, Rebecca Lovell.
Thanks, Tell us where you came from and tell us a little bit about your background.
Great. I am a Seattle native. I hope we can still be friends. I did some hard time in the Midwest and moved back to Seattle about 9 years ago. I spent the first decade of my career in corporate and went back to grad school to get my MBA, actually with the desire of running a nonprofit that I cared about. So I was very fortunate, I think, to kind of put myself in the way of good luck, if you will. I always have a plan, but I'm open to a better one when it comes along. So I can thank a lot of my recent career path to serendipity. But after grad school, I ran an angel organization called the Alliance of Angels in Seattle. Did that for about 3 years, so had the pleasure of coaching, interviewing, screening over 500 entrepreneurs over the course of 3 years. And that was just an amazing ride. I was there sort of up to and through the downturn. And I was recruited out of that job to run the nonprofit of my dreams that was called the Northwest Entrepreneur Network. I got to do the same things that kind of got me out of bed every day, which is spending time with people like you, totally inspired, smart, driven, passionate entrepreneurs. But the kind of nuance there, instead of working for angel investors, I got to work for entrepreneurs, and my heart has always been with all of you. So over the course of a few years, I hosted over 70 programs a year. We served over 3,500 people on an annual basis with educational programming. My job essentially is I was a part-time matchmaker and a part-time coach. And it was, again, another just amazing journey. But as my boyfriend says, if you hang out in a barbershop for long enough, you're going to get your hair cut. So I've been kind of hanging around startups for 5-6 years, and I got this amazing opportunity again. Sort of the stars lined up, and met my business partner John Cook, who I've known for years. He's been covering entrepreneurship and venture capital investing for over 10 years. You may remember him from such favorites as the PI. He went on to found a division of the Business Journal called Tech Flash, and then about 7 months ago, along with his co-founder, Todd Bishop, launched GeekWire. And we are, let's see if I can kind of wrap my mouth around this, we are the hottest news site based in our region. We have this wonderful thing called editorial independence. That sadly makes us pretty unique in this day and age. But we report on the entire spectrum of geek, from startups and investing to the big tech giants that are in our region's backyard. And what I've come to believe is our mission, which is very much aligned with yours, is that we want to be the megaphone for innovation in this region. So it's very closely aligned to what I've been doing for the past few years. When I sat down with John over a beer, which frankly I think is where a lot of really important decisions get made, we just realized that this was a partnership made in heaven. They are the journalists, and I do everything else when it comes to GeekWire. So sorry, that was a long answer to a short question, but my life story.
Trust me, these people would rather listen to you than me.
I don't know about that.
Love Chuck. All right.
That's proud.
So they're good people in spite of that. So how long have you been with GeekWire?
It has been, let's see, 5 months now.
Right.
It's been an absolutely wild ride. Yeah.
And now you're on the business side now.
I am.
Right.
So seriously, everything from selling ads and annual sponsorships to running events, finance, operations. I mean, literally, as chief business officer,
right.
It is everything but journalism. Although I do actually have a little advice column for startups that's called Lovell Letters.
Okay.
So check it out.
So you have an intriguing background, and I think obviously Spokane is emerging, we'll say, because I can tell you, and I can tell all of you, there's something happening here. You may not know it. I know it. I can feel it, and I talk to a lot of people. There's some really cool stuff going on. There's some people in this room that are creating some really cool stuff. And there's for whatever reason, the economy, I don't know what's happening, but a lot of young people are staying in Spokane. And that really excites me because a lot of you folks are very smart. And it's really exciting. And I think it's a combination of the nightlife is a little better. At least I know when I was younger. Never mind. Speakeasies like when you were around, Chuck? Prohibition.com. Sorry. I couldn't help it. There's something really cool going on here. But let's talk about Seattle. Let's talk about, you've been in the heart of the entrepreneurial culture, venture capital, the spin-out effect, people getting rich and doing it over again. I mean, that's a great model. But what's going on now? What's the vibe in Seattle like right now?
Yeah. And I think you already touched upon some of the main drivers of sort of a talent or innovation economy. Research capacity, obviously a great talent pool. Funding, and that kind of ecosystem. And what I think, those have sort of always been, I think, the key drivers. But what we write about on GeekWire, and most importantly hear from our readers, is that that's kind of necessary but not sufficient to get this vibe that you're talking about. What we've been hearing a lot about is the need for mentorship, a desire for co-working, and also just practice. There's been this thirst for events where you get to pitch your business to a friendly audience before you're ready to go prime time and talk to big funders or huge business partners. So those are three things that we're picking up on and really trying to help fill that gap.
Right. Does it feel like, we talked about this on the way out here, Seattle's trying to compete with Silicon Valley in a way?
I kind of get tired of this sort of, we're playing second fiddle to the Bay. It's a very different culture. I mean, it's more money chasing more deals, just plain old critical mass.
Right.
And there's always something valuable to be learned by people who are doing something interesting or different or, better.
Right.
New York's an interesting place to look at. Boston, Austin, Texas. I personally would rather us sort of spend our time celebrating what makes us unique and what makes us successful and pouring all the fuel onto that fire that we possibly can.
Right. Or coffee.
Right. Or alcohol, a combination of both, sort of a zero-sum game. Yeah.
Exactly. No, it's interesting because everybody has their thing in Seattle. We were with Tom Simpson today. If you don't know who Tom Simpson is, he used to manage Northwest Venture Associates, and he's done a great job of taking over the Spoken Angel Alliance, and he works with Connect Northwest and Win Partners. And I talked to him, a couple months ago, and he said literally they funded over 10 deals in the last, year, $2.5 million. Am I getting close on some of those numbers? It's really interesting, and you hear this a lot. There's no money in Spokane. Well, there's definitely money. There's definitely money here. It's really tough getting people to invest in startups. But according to Tom and other people that you're going to hear from in some of the breakouts, some of this money is starting to be invested because there's starting to be some successes. And that's really what's starting to happen. And that's what I'm starting to feel is happening here.
And another ingredient, I think, in that thriving ecosystem is not just money kind of lying around, but you really do need lead investors. So the Tom Simpsons of the world who are willing to, step up and say, all right, I'm standing behind this entrepreneur. I will negotiate the terms of the deal. I will sit on the board if that's appropriate, really kind of spend time with management. Who's with me, much more powerful than, one thing that I saw when I was running the Alliance of Angels is we would host these regional meetings of the Angel Capital Association. And so I got to meet people from Vancouver to Portland to Spokane to Montana. And when we asked them as, leaders of these organizations, what keeps you up at night? To a person, it was the lack of lead investors. So you get, 5 or 6 people who say they're interested in doing a deal and then ask the obvious question, who wants to lead? Everyone takes a giant step backwards.
Right.
So there is money in the ecosystem, and you get fuel back in the tank when you have exits, when you have IPOs and acquisitions. And Seattle is certainly a really generous town. I can't kvetch about people being stingy. We're incredibly philanthropic.
Right.
But there's a different activity that takes, embracing uncertainty and risk tolerance, that is part of the angel investor endeavor. So I'd love to see more investor education and kind of bring more people into the mix.
So angel investing there is really kind of part of the mainstream in a way, right? It's really part of discussions that go on. It's
Yeah.
being an entrepreneur is actually a good thing.
Right.
And you're a risk taker. Where in some communities, and I don't want to say Spokane, I do think it's changing. Sometimes you get beat up a little bit for failing, or having an idea and people look at you like, yeah, good luck with that.
Right.
And it's
I
tough.
think some of the stigma around that failure has been removed over the last several years. And frankly, when we would look at deals, we have sort of our top 3 pros and top 3 cons. And in the pro column, all right, this entrepreneur is a former Microsoft product manager. In the con column, this entrepreneur is a former Microsoft product manager, right? So really smart people with domain expertise, but there is something substantively different about taking business from $0 to $1 million than working within a resource-rich environment and taking a business unit from 100 to 150 million. Different undertaking.
And the beautiful thing is when you get someone with a brilliant idea but they've never done it, and you match them with somebody who has done it and has a resume and has that pedigree, and then you connect them together.
And that's where mentorship comes in. And that's one thing I really like about Seattle that perhaps Spokane has in common. We are a 1 degree of separation kind of town. We're one person away from connecting you to the half a dozen advisors or team members or service providers that you might need. And so what we find in our sort of big town mentality is that groups like Techstars are thriving. Founder Institute, which started in the Bay Area, has a really vibrant chapter in Seattle. People who are truly collegial and want to give back. And that is an ingredient that's sort of hard to quantify, but it's in that vibe.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's throw some questions out. Feel free to shout a few out. Yes, sir.
Mel Jones. I sense a kind of an age bias thing going on here. It seems to be directed towards young entrepreneurs and stuff. Speaking as a mature entrepreneur, I hope that I can get some consideration.
Bias from me or Rebecca?
No. It's just like this program with Community-Minded Enterprise.
Gotcha.
I just met with David Curry this morning, and he's, this is not his first rodeo. This is his 4th startup. He doesn't have to do it. He could easily retire. But grown-ups running businesses who know what they're doing, whether he's in a new industry, but he understands startupping, and he understands the irrational exuberance and the pits of despair that you experience as an entrepreneur, and he knows how to rally a team, and he knows
that's a good way to put it,
right? And I think there also is, frankly, a bias around. There's a lot of attention paid to angel-funded companies and venture-backed companies, and I actually teach a class in venture capital investing, so I have to kind of stay up on the stats. But there are 600,000 businesses started in the U.S. every year. By some wild stretch of the imagination, you could say that 10% of them are angel funded, and that would include my brother's bar, so I'm now an angel investor myself, right? And less than 0.5% are venture funded. So let's just sort of put that, in the landscape. And so there might be some undue attention paid to different sectors, but every single, whether you're bootstrapping or angel funded or VC funded, 21 or 65, you're all part of that healthy innovation economy.
Yeah, I've invested in several bars.
By keeping your tab open?
Is that different?
Okay, got it.
Never got a certificate. So weird.
To my mind, just another thought, again, trying to think about the obstacles. It seems like there's a bias again towards technology. And my product involves agriculture and urban farming. Am I going to encounter people who say, well, you're not tech, so we're not going to talk to you?
Right. Well, I think that it's what I've seen is not so much a technology bias, but it's a concern around how does the business scale. So if you have a business that's in the services industry that scales with human capital, that's kind of a linear equation. It's like, all right, I add 10% to my workforce, I get 10% more work. That doesn't tend to spell angel investment or venture investment. You're looking for that hockey stick and at least a step function, if not exponential growth. There are some businesses that are more capital intensive, whether it's real estate or agriculture or clean tech, frankly, life sciences. That's a different kind of beast when it comes to investing. So you're talking about a qualitatively different investor who's willing to put more money to work over a longer period of time than the traditional angel investment, which is 3 to 5 to 7 years, to the traditional venture capital investment, which exits in 8 to 10 years. And some of these other plays, agriculture, wineries, which is kind of in the agriculture, real estate business, clean tech, life sciences, we're talking about a 20-year life cycle of investment. So I would key in on scalability versus the industry sector, and again, it takes a special kind of investor. I've seen a lot of really amazing, innovative, game-changing technologies out of Eastern Washington, and I get to see them because they come over to Seattle and they're in the business plan competition, whether you're dealing with wind power, solar power, predicting weather changes so farmers can get a better yield out of their crops. It might not sound sexy, but those are amazing investment opportunities that can come, in this region. So I think it's great to celebrate those.
There seems to be a theme, and when I was running Connect Northwest, we had something called the Springboard program, and we would have companies go through like a 6-month process where they would get just consistent coaching and all the different elements of their business plan, but we would get them ready to present. So there seems to be, what I'm hearing is that need to really sit down and learn and somewhere get some education on the process of investing, what that means, what investors are looking for, and don't take it personal, but then maybe align with mentors, the gray-hairs, the people that have run real businesses and have experience, and get them on your team as an advisor or maybe in your management team, and really then you'll have a fighting chance to get funding, but also figure out, do you even need funding? Should you just go out and sell and generate revenue? So I think there could be a great way to mix, whether you're young or older, but get a combination and put a great management team together and then get connected.
So going on that point, I think most of the people here are like me and their company's bootstrapped. When does it make sense, or is there an equation or some oversimplification to say when should you have those conversations for investment or funding or whatever? Because I think most of the people here are probably similar to me, and the mindset is I'm just going to go out and make it happen.
So if you want to retain ownership and control of your company, don't seek funding. You do have to make that fundamental decision. What are your personal goals around the business? And there are these companies that you call kind of lifestyle businesses that almost have a pejorative connotation. But what's wrong with creating a profitable company and having a great life? So again, and that is going to be some 90% of the businesses out there, and it's those small businesses that really do sustain our economy. So. In terms of when do you go raise money, that's going to depend. What business are you in?
Online marketing.
Sorry, online marketing? Okay. So again, I would say that do you have a services-based company or is it product-driven?
A mix.
Yeah. So I think some of the best companies I've seen are people who have provided services to their customers for years. They see this pattern where, oh my gosh, my clients need the same thing, and they productize that solution. It's really hard to fund services-based entities, but if you come up with some kind of productized, scalable solution to your client's problem and feel comfortable sort of spinning off those businesses, that could be an interesting angel investment opportunity. So think scale. One of the most common excuses that you'll hear from angel investors and venture capitalists is, wow, great idea, love the team, cool business, come back to me when you have more traction. And in this class that I teach on venture capital investing, I keep asking VCs, who are my guest speakers, what does traction mean? And it's in the eye of the beholder. The one concept that's resonated with me, it's around velocity. So once you get your product out there, are you seeing an uptick in customer adoption? And when you've got some momentum going behind that product is really a great time to be talking to investors. Angels don't get super excited about paying off your debts. They do get excited about growing your team, growing your business, being growth capital, being that infusion you need to go and take over the next segment of the world. So a little vague perhaps, but that's what you're going to hear from investors as well. So.
He wanted to know the day.
Yeah, right? Let me get out my crystal ball. Okay.
Yeah. Scott?
Yeah, hi. So Scott Broder and I run a small fund in the area. A minute ago, you were talking about how different industry sectors kind of require different amounts of capital and typically have different horizons for liquidity.
Right.
Can you comment just on investors' aversion to the .com? I mean, although we probably love .coms because we understand it. Do you find that angels, either as individual investors or investors who want to put money into a fund, do you find they kind of think, oh, a .com, didn't that blow up and that's too risky?
Yeah, I guess I'm not finding that now. I think it's, to say that a business is a .com is to say, oh, this business is in the cloud, this mysterious cloud. Those are, those are the enabling technologies around the real business that they're in. And so I don't think that sort of .com implosion from 2001, I don't think investors are still experiencing that hangover, is what you're asking. Yes, investors in general are more risk averse. In fact, they became more risk averse in October of 2008 than they were in September of 2008. I mean, I saw that happen. I would see 3 deals come in, September and October. The October deals took a 50% valuation haircut. Investors were absolutely kind of taking a step back and just waiting on the sidelines. We had 7 quarters in a row of exactly 0 venture-backed IPOs, and that's the worst it's been since 1978. But angel investing has come back. Venture investing has come back. We had double-digit increases in both in 2010. And let's face it, the mechanics of venture capital are they've got a fund that they have to deploy over a set period of time. If they're hanging around on the sidelines in 2008 and 9 like they were, in 2010 and 11, they've got some ground to make up. So they are getting off the sidelines. They're getting back in the game. I don't see an aversion to that. And that could be a little bit of my own Seattle myopia. We've got a lot of big players in our backyard who are game changers. Microsoft, Amazon, certainly. And now we've got, Expedia, Google's got a great footprint there. Facebook, Zynga, Zillow just IPO'd. PopCap just had a $1.2 billion acquisition. So lots of big companies out there. Money's coming back into the ecosystem, but we're not afraid of, we're kind of a picks and shovels town, right? We are into selling tools into the industries that are booming. So education is huge. That's a huge global problem. We're getting into education technology, right? So we're selling the picks and shovels to educators who are trying to fix the world. We are in enabling technologies around clean tech. We're not coming up with the newest renewable fuels, but we've got some great IT software around energy consumption and management. We're not so much doing therapeutics, but we've got some great devices and diagnostics going on. And consumer web is hot, like you said, because you can wrap your brain around it. It's pretty easy to see that velocity in adoption. So that is a long way of saying, I think, the investment community is coming back, and all we need is some more wins, more acquisitions, more IPOs, more entrepreneurs who've made it, who are willing to put money back into this whole ecosystem.
Yeah, I think what I just heard you talk about really is what was the impetus for this program, this forum, and us moving forward as a community, is how Seattle entrepreneurs have looked at opportunities in demand areas by not maybe making the alternative fuel, but services that serve that industry. And it's really smart. I mean, the one I think about around here is mobile. And I think mobile, obviously, we're just the tip of the iceberg. And there's a couple companies here like Gravity Jack and I know Zipline Interactive. There's some really cool things happening around here in mobile. And I think that's the smart thing for us to do is educate the entrepreneur community on where the demand areas, where are the gaps, what could be the services that online marketing folks like Six Man Marketing provide in key sectors, emerging sectors. And then angel investors are smart. Money will find you. It just is. It's smart enough to find you in Spokane. There's enough wins here, I think, that have proven that. Money travels, last time I checked. Not to me, but... So, any other questions from the audience?
So you mentioned a demand for co-working when you were talking about entrepreneurs and kind of that ecosystem. So could you talk about how co-working helps Seattle, perhaps, and what the benefits are for that?
Yeah, great. So I think, as all of you entrepreneurs know, entrepreneuring can be kind of a lonely battle. It's great to have co-founders there along with you so you can sort of even out those highs and lows and the emotional roller coaster. That said, you still could be 2 guys or gals, in your garage, coding away. there has been this thirst for, I don't want to work out of my home, I don't want to work out of a coffee shop, I want to be around other like-minded, inspired people. And whether it's a whole bunch of technology startups in the same sector, or you've got this sort of thriving building that has not just startups, but investors and advisors.
And a wine bar.
And alcohol flowing and coffee, 24/7. And people who can give advice, like attorneys and accountants. That sort of one-stop shopping really increases your efficiency, and I think it's also just a psychological win. So when I look at something like the TechStars program, and it's an incubator, and full disclosure, I am a mentor for the program. This is our second year in Seattle. The organization started in Boulder, and in Seattle, the program is ranked 7 in the nation's incubators. The Boulder program is first, actually beat out Y Combinator, which is kind of a big deal. Yeah. So what do you see out of that? Well, last year, the 10 companies who went through this very intensive mentoring program and co-working situation, 7 out of 10 of those got funded, which is a pretty remarkably high achievement in that space. I would bank on 9 out of 10 coming out of this year's cohort. Are they smarter? Are they more innovative? I would argue, like we did in grad school, along with my teammates in this venture capital competition, you can say, MIT and Harvard and Oxford, they're smarter, but are they 8 hours smarter? Like, we were just willing to work harder. And so when you get smart, inspired people and you put them together with others who can help them along, it's kind of rising tide raises all ships and everybody wins. And just a year into TechStars, we're already seeing some of those wins under our belt. And that, inspires more wins. So, yeah, thank you.
So in Seattle, do you have an open, official economic development process, or do you have kind of a closed economic development process, and how does that impact what we're talking about today?
Yeah. So are you talking about like the Washington State Department of Commerce and that they have their fingers in the pie?
Enterprise Seattle.
Seattle.
Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because historically in Spokane we have probably a smaller group of people who are sort of masterminding the economic development goals and objectives for the region, and it's kind of hard to understand how those decisions get made sometimes, et cetera. So I just wonder how the relationship of trying to be innovative, but not having so many people know what the game plan is.
Well, so I would say that we are kind of a loose affiliation of nation states. So there are, other than Enterprise Seattle, which got some state funding, is now supporting incubating gaming companies. That's one sort of deployment of state capital. Most of the rest of us run around bootstrapping, raising private money, just hosting free events like one called Hops and Chops, which you show up to this bar on Capitol Hill in Seattle, and if you're a service provider, you buy a pitcher of beer. If you're a broke startup, you drink their beer and you get together. So there's a lot of sort of organic
Why are you pointing at me,
activity.
June?
There's a lot of grassroots activity going on. There is, it would be nice to be able to connect the dots amongst those organizations. And there is another group that's headquartered in Seattle called Startup Weekend. They got about $1.8 million in funding from the Kauffman Foundation, and they are looking to help inspire entrepreneurs, not create businesses in a weekend, but inspire, get people out of their analysis paralysis and out of their cubicles and offices and into the startup world. But they're looking to sort of bring those organizations together with, again, foundation funding, not state funding. So they're not beholden to the metrics of those kinds of grant makers. We sort of hold ourselves mutually accountable. But I'm really curious and excited to see what happens in 2012 when we get more co-working, when we actually are putting money behind these incubated seed stage companies, and when we sort of have a big tent under which some of these grassroots organizations will organize. But right now, like I said, sort of fiefdom, if you will. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Barb.
I'm with WSU Spokane. I have colleagues here from Eastern Washington University. I wonder if you could speak to the role of higher ed in fostering innovation in general.
Yeah, that's been actually a debate on GeekWire if you're reading. On the one hand, you can point to college dropouts like Bill Gates, and on the other, you can talk about spinning out, incubated business from the labs. And we, look at the University of Washington in our backyard, and the Center for Commercialization, used to be called Tech Transfer. Frankly, that's been a struggle for us to streamline that process. I used to see really smart, PhDs coming out of the university and say, all right, we're curing cancer, we're saving the world, and we're excited, we're salivating. We get to the end of our Q&A, and we're like, yeah, so what are the terms of your license with the university? And they said, oh, we're in negotiations, we'll be out of there in 6 weeks. 6 months later, they're still negotiating those terms. So if I ran the world, I would love to see spinning out innovation from the university and streamlining that process of getting your licensing agreements negotiated so you can get out there and cease being a science experiment and start being a business. So there's lots of talent, I think, locked up in the really wonderful research institutions across the state, and turning out those really bright scientists and pairing them with business people and going through business plan competitions and letting them see the light of day in the business community and meeting these connectors and mentors. That's where we're going to put pressure on some of these historically bureaucratic processes and get them out into the real world. But I've seen some improvements, and I'm excited about that. So, yeah.
I'm getting a signal from the back of the room that we need to wrap it up.
Yeah, totally.
Go ahead. Maybe one or two more quick questions. Go ahead, Jean.
I'm just really happy that you came here and...
Me? Oh, sorry.
And made this presentation because about 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, I read an article about that John Cook wrote when he was in the Seattle PI. He was the tech guy.
Yeah.
And it made a question in my mind, and he had his telephone number on there. So I called him, and he answered the telephone.
Yeah.
That's very big. And so I asked him the question, he gave me the answer, and he was one of the people that helped my startup move to the next level just by answering the telephone. So I'm really glad that GeekWire is here. And
that's great to hear. Yeah, he will answer his phone. He's got a 2-year-old boy now, and his wife occasionally yells at him if he picks it up during dinner, but otherwise we're all really accessible. And we were talking in the car about, all right, how do Spokane businesses get into sort of national publications like GeekWire? And it's the same way that Seattle companies do. Don't send us a press release. I guess occasionally you can pick up the phone, but send John or Todd sort of 2 lines about why this is news. Put yourself in the minds of a reporter. Know that they have a problem to solve. They've got a beat that they're covering. Step 1, read their stuff, so know what their interests are, what their hook is. Help them solve that problem by saying, hey, you're looking for young talent. Gosh, 41 out of the 45 employees at Green Cupboards are under 25. Oh, that's interesting. That's something that John cares about. But if you do your homework and make his job easy and keep it to a couple sentences, that's the best pitch that you can make to a reporter. And I'm just delighted to hear that John was able to help you. That's great. Yeah, wonderful. Nice. Well, thank you. I'm happy to be.
One final thing. I want to make sure we spent a lot of time talking about angel investing and venture capital. And I think anyone who's a VC or angel investor who's gone through that process, which is a delight, would you find that this is true? Some people are kind of in a hurry to say, oh, I'm going to go get some angel capital or some funding. And you kind of want to say, why?
Right.
Don't put yourself through that. It's not as fun as you think it is.
Right. And I would say the biggest red flag that I hear is, gosh, I wasn't able to bootstrap this business, so I'm going to go raise money. Tell you what, it's the companies that can effectively bootstrap that do raise money. So I would turn it on its head a little bit.
Right.
I know, a little bit of a catch-22.
And it's tough. It's we're a startup. We've been going on 2 years now, and we're grinding it out. And I am so impressed with entrepreneurs that really stick it out and bootstrap. I mean, it's a tough thing. Yeah. You don't get paid for the first few years.
That's right.
Most of the time. Unless you're a trust fund kid, but that's a different story.
Top ramen.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Let's give Rebecca a big round of applause.
Thanks, Jeff.